What's up, everybody? This is KJ here, and I'm bringing you a draft analysis for another league that I joined, the YouTube Challengers League. This is a YouTube required upload league, so all 18 coaches, myself included, will be uploading our battles every week. Actual battles are going to start, I think, not this coming week, but the following week, so expect some uploads after that. I'm going to try to stay more consistent on getting my uploads and just kind of keeping more content onto the channel. UGL final should be going up very soon, and UGL season 2 should be starting in the next couple of weeks as well. So I'll have a couple of things for that, and then also LET playoffs. So yeah, really exciting. But yeah, I'm glad to get into another Wi-Fi league. I think I've had a bit of fun doing Wi-Fi leagues as opposed to showdown leagues. It's just kind of where I am right now. Like I enjoy the in-game aspects, like seeing everything, and even sort of doing the live comm is a lot of fun. So, and I like the timer aspect, at least in terms of like move timer and stuff like that. The game timer is kind of whack, but yeah. Anyway, we'll jump into this league. Shout out to Eli for getting me into the league. I had no idea this was even a thing, and then he invited me, and I was kind of up in the air. Wasn't sure if I wanted to pick it up, but decided let's go with it. So yeah. So now to just kind of get into the analysis. So I had no idea what I wanted to use. This is Crown Tundra DLC included. So I was thinking, like, at first, now that Victini's in, like everybody knows Victini's a favorite of mine. So I was thinking maybe I'll pick up Victini. Obviously the Tapus are there, so that would be pretty fun. I was considering Kartana, but Kartana was actually banned for this league. So I was like, okay, it depends on what pick I get, but we'll see what happens. So I ended up with the second overall pick. And another thing to note is Libero Cinderace is allowed in this league, so I was really considering that at pick 2 if it made it to me. But I think, for me, I was thinking the best 2 Mons in this format, or best 3 Mons in the format, I should say, were Garchomp because it gets Scale Shot, then Dragapult, and Libero Cinderace. Just because, like, things like Torn T with Nasty, or Torn T in general was banned, not just Nasty Plot. Tapu Lele was banned, like I said, Kartana was banned, Lando I was hard banned. So, yeah, I was thinking one of those 3 Mons is something that I'll take, but it really depended on what the person ahead of me took. The person ahead of me actually ended up going Tapu Koko, so that was good, and I think Tapu Koko is also a very good pick there. Like, Tapu Koko is very good Mon. Just, I think it's a little disappointing it doesn't actually get CC and Play Rough, but it is what it is. So anyway, with that going off the board first, I thought that this was a perfect opportunity to finally draft Dragapult. So my first pick was Dragapult, and this thing is so good. It has so many sets. There's the, like, status spam sets with, I mean, it can click Will-O-Wisp, it can click T-Wave, it can click Hex afterwards. There's a lot of setup sets with, like, DD. You can obviously run it Scarved, and it's one of the top, like, 3 fastest Mons in the format. Or top 2, actually. Only being outsped by Zeraora. So, yeah, and obviously then you can have, like, specs, you can have band. It's so good, and it has 2 very good abilities, one being Clear Body, one being Infiltrator, so, like, it stops the potential sub-setup sets. Yeah, and it's a very fast pivot, and yeah, it's a very, very good Mon in draft. It can do pretty much everything. So I was really excited to pick it up, and sort of going through, I thought, okay, I have Dragapult. I want to make sure that it can be set up a lot, like, late game to be able to, like, clean up. So I was thinking, I do want hazards on this team. I also want very good breakers, so I want a good special breaker. I want a good physical breaker. And the 2 things that sort of Dragapult struggles with are fairies, or I should say the 3 things. Fairies, other ghosts, obviously, because, like, if you're not Scarved or, like, anything like that, then other ghosts can be potentially faster, can hit incredibly hard. Like, ghost spam is a thing. Good thing Spectrier, which I also didn't mention, is also banned. So that's at least good. But anyway, I wanted to make sure that I could cover Dragapult pretty well, being the fact that, like I said, other dragons, dark types, ghosts, etc., fairies, gonna be able to hit it hard. So my next pick was actually Primarina. Anyone that's followed any of my content knows that Primarina has been one of my favorite mons to use in draft. It's incredibly good. It hits so hard. It's deceptively bulky on just in general, like on both sides. I mean, you can sort of EV it to live a lot of neutral super effective, a lot of non-stab super effective hits, and then you can do things like give it resist berries and different things like that to make sure that it's sort of living some of those even stab super effective hits on both the special and physical side. So it's really good. But this thing, again, like it can set up. It's one of the premier special breakers in the format. And I didn't mention this, but one thing to note is this draft was a bit restrictive. We only have 10 mons, and we get 660 points, where the highest point value was 120. So there's like tier 1 was 120, tier 2 would be 100, 380, 460, 540, and then there's like a tier 6 with like some of the lower like NFE mons and stuff like that. That was 20 points. So Dragapult, obviously being a 120 mon, I wanted to make sure that I got something else that was really good to pair with it. And Primarina was 100 points, which I think in most formats it's one of the best offensive tier 2s. So I was just looking at it, I was like, okay, I'm going to take Primarina, and I've already spent 220 of my 660 points, but like this is a pair of mons that I can bring to most games, if not all of them. So yeah, the next mon I wanted to get something that was sort of going to be able to cover the ghost weakness for Dragapult, and also be able to kind of break physically. And so I was thinking about it, and I was looking, and I saw this in the tier 3 80 point tier, and I felt like I really needed to grab it. Originally I wanted Moltres, because Moltres was in there, and I was gonna kind of not worry about the like weaknesses at that point. But when Moltres got taken in round 2, I was like, okay, well, I took Primarina, and then I was like, all right, now I need to just kind of cover my weaknesses. So the next mon I took was Obstagoon. So Obstagoon's a really cool mon. Used it a little bit in VGC, so excited about that. It gets some good abilities, both Guts, and it gets Defiant. So people will have a harder time like clicking Defog or bringing Intimidate, stuff like that, especially with the fact that like Dragapult has Clear Body, and now I have Obstagoon with the Defiant. So really excited about that. And the really nice thing here is like fighting types absolutely destroy Obstagoon. Like 4x weakness to fighting, even though it's reasonably bulky, it's still like it loses to things like Mach Punch priority, and again, just like fighting types that can just kind of wipe it out. So having a very good fighting resist in Primarina, and then having a fighting immunity in Dragapult, I was pretty excited. I was like, okay, I can cover this pretty well. And Primarina also kind of can act as like a slow pivot into Obstagoon, which is really nice. And obviously, Dragapult can be a fast pivot into Obstagoon. And Obstagoon does take hits. Like, it's a lot bulkier than people sort of ever imagine. I think a lot of people say, like a lot of people, when I picked Obstagoon, they were like, oh, I don't feel as though I've seen Obstagoon do well in draft. Like, it's kind of just like always good on paper, but not very good. And that might be the case. I've never used it, but I have seen it perform well in draft, and I think it definitely has the opportunity to do so, especially on this team. Yeah, so pretty excited about that. It's, like I said, it's definitely a mon that I'm pretty pumped to use. So, all right, so after this, I was looking at my team, and I'd already used a lot of points. Like, I think I used, that's 300 points, because Obstagoon was 80 points, plus the 120, plus the 100. So 300 points already allocated, and I was really thinking, like, I need to pick up I need to either pick up a good low tier or I need to really get something that I think is good value. Like if I'm gonna go high tier, I need to pick up something that's good value. And I was also looking, and I was talking to a good friend of mine, Tago, as well as, or I should say, two good friends of mine, Tago and Clay, and they both mentioned like getting a slow pivot would probably be good for this team. And I was like, yeah, I think you're right. Like getting something that's slower and that I can sort of pivot into, things like Obstagoon and Dragapult and Primarina would be good. So I decided I was gonna use my second pick, so the top of the 5th round, to pick up a good low tier, but I wanted to kind of get something that, again, was a good slow pivot. And anybody that has sort of followed my drafts knows that I'm notoriously bad at drafting steel types. Like, I always draft pretty poor steel types. I mean, in ISL Season 3, I had Escavalier, and then I dropped it. In TBA Season 3, I had Jirachi, but I wasn't good with it, and then I dropped it and ended up with Kartana, which, like, isn't your traditional steel type, and then I had Togedemaru, which, like, can be pretty lackluster. It's tier 5 in Natdex for a reason, so steel types weren't great there. Yeah, anyway, so usually I feel like I'm end up in a spot where I'm like, what's going to be my steel type? I don't know, like, all of the sort of big top-tier steel types are gone, and so I decided that with this pick, I'd go with Scizor. So Scizor is a 100-point mon. I really thought that Scizor could have been justified as a 120-point mon, and that's why I thought it was kind of a steal here. Like, Scizor is just so good. As long as it's not clicking a move, like U-turn in front of something that has Flame Body, because Flame Body, I'm convinced, is a 100% chance to burn Scizor. Other than that, I think this mon is just absolutely incredible. It's a solid offensive option. It's a solid defensive option. Like, it just has so many different sets it can run. It has access to SD. It has access to Roost. It has access to Defog. Like, it can be bulky if you need it to be. It can be offensive if you need it to be. And the other thing is, with things like Primarina that are pretty slow, and even Obstagoon, like at base 95, with the influx of new mons that came back, like, there's a lot of mons that are sitting around base 100. So I think having Bullet Punch priority is very, very nice. And it's also solid that I have a steel type that's not weak to fighting. So again, that kind of covers the fighting weakness that Obstagoon has as well. And it's another mon that can pressure the potential, like, bulkier dark types that Dragapult doesn't necessarily want to deal with. So I think Scizor just fits this core really well, and I think right now I have 4 mons that I can bring to any game. Like, I think there are going to be opportunities to bring all 4 of these mons every week, and it's a 8-week season, I believe. I believe it's 8 weeks. I think there's 9 teams in each division. So, yeah, it's 18. Yep. So, yeah, it should be 8 weeks. Or no, maybe it's 9 weeks. I think there's 1 cross-division game. So, anyway, like, these mons are just incredibly good. And it shows because now I have 260 points left. So, at pick 5, like I said, I needed something that was a very good low tier. And I also really felt like I needed hazards. I needed stealth rocks for sure, and I also was sort of, we were in call while the draft was going on, and people were talking about low tier ground types, and I was stuck between 2 low tier ground types, one of them being Sandslash, which was nice because it also gave me a spin option, and I looked at it and I was like, okay, like, I get spin and I get spikes and rocks, but I also thought with how many dragons went off the board early, like almost all of the like high tier dragons went off the board early, I was really thinking, like, okay, I need something that's going to be able to pressure offensively, and Sandslash doesn't really do that, but the mon I ended up going with, Piloswine, does. Piloswine hits really hard. It is a very good rocker. Obviously, it's very bulky with Eviolite, and it's a thick fat mon, so it can switch into some of the fire type moves that Scizor doesn't necessarily want to take. So that was sort of another thing I was thinking of. I was like, okay, thick fat is nice, and also Oblivious will have its situations where it can be useful. Like, so I think overall having Piloswine here is really good. And another thing I forgot to mention, this league has item clause. So, like, at this point, Eviolite on Piloswine is an item that's not taking away from, like, being able to run something on Dragapult or Primarina or Obstagoon or Scizor. Whereas, like, if I had taken something like Sandslash, then they would potentially be fighting for item slots. So that was something that I kind of had to keep in mind here. And I mean, with the fact that I'm gonna have to take more low tier mons, I was also thinking like Piloswine with Eviolite, like it can run other items. Like Piloswine can be banded, for example. Like I've seen that. Or I've also seen people run like Never Melt Ice. And I mean that's more common with Mamoswine. Piloswine still hits pretty hard, so it's still something that should be considered and can be considered. But I figured I'm gonna have to take an NFE that's probably gonna be more reliant on the Eviolite, so I thought Piloswine was a good fit here. The next mon that I took, I actually ended up dropping in the grace period. We did have one grace period transaction for free, and originally I took Jolteon, and it was kind of a panic pick, but also like I needed more speed, and I really liked the fact that I could have Jolteon and be able to just kind of pivot in and out on things. It was another fast pivot, and I just thought that it was going to be a solid fit. But after kind of looking at the team, talking to a few people, it really didn't fit as well as I had hoped with the end result of the team, and I really had like a big gap in my speed tiers. And so in terms of like some of the middling speed tiers, especially, I was missing like a good base 80 potential Scarfer. And so the next mon that I went with actually ended up being Rotom Fan. So now another mon from my UGL team, first Primarina, now Rotom Fan. And Rotom Fan was a mon that I think on the last time I had it, it didn't really fit the team super well. It felt a bit redundant because I had things like Skarmory, but it was also pretty solid. Like, and it can do a lot of things. It can spread status. It can defog. It has Air Slash, which is more accurate than something like Hurricane, and so that's nice. Don't have to worry about missing as much. It's still base 95 accuracy, but that's whatever. It gets access, obviously, to all the electric pivoting moves and like a Volt Switch, and it also gets Thunderbolt, Discharge, potentially get Paras. Has some interesting sets with things like Pain Split. It gets Nasty Plot now, so now being Gen 8. Yeah, and so I think having something like Rotom Fan alongside Dragapult, like it's really nice. I mean, it's gonna be able to spread burns, spread Paras, spread Toxic. So really excited to use Rotom Fan again. It's a mon I'm pretty comfortable with. Just Rotom forms in general. I think a lot of my drafts end up having them just because they sort of patch things up very nicely. And yeah, I think Rotom Fan will be a solid mon here. So, and then with the next pick, I wanted a way to rapid spin, and I also knew that I needed to get more hazards, so rocks, as well as potentially spikes. So I decided to scoop up another NFE, and that NFE is Caracol. So I think, generally speaking, Colossal would fit the team better. Colossal was also 40 extra points, and I think at this point in the draft, Colossal was taken. So I I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with some of my other points. I knew, like, just looking at the draft, I wanted a spinner, I wanted a spiker, I wanted another rocker, and I also knew, like, long term I would need a fighting type. I kind of wanted a grounded poison type, and I thought like a grass type would be really good for some of like the electric spam and stuff like that that's floating around, because I think there's an electric spam team. There's a team with like LAKEY. Yeah, obviously the team with Coco, they ended up taking like Circuitry. So I think I wanted to make sure that I had options there as well, with how threatening that is, and also a psychic type. Like I feel like a psychic type would be nice here, especially for another fighting resist. So Carkol, I think, has 3 great abilities. Flame Body is probably the best one, although Flash Fire for things like predicting Scizor, or like predicting with Scizor, is going to be really nice. I think Flash Fire won't be as useful because Carkol's offensive capabilities just aren't there. And I think that's honestly part of my biggest complaint with this team, is that like my fire type isn't even close to offensive. Yeah, with base 60 attack and special attack, it's not really hitting too hard. But with 80 HP, 90 defense, and 70 special defense, like with EVLA, it's going to be very bulky, and it does what it's supposed to do really well. It comes in, it sets hazards, it spins. So I'm not super worried about that. I see it coming to some games. It probably won't come to a lot of games, and who knows? I might end up dropping it for a different fire type. But overall, I think Carkol is a decent pick in the 20-point tier, and I wasn't too disappointed. So yeah. And so with my next pick, I kind of went a little off the rails with this one. This is a mon that I've been preaching about for a while. I've really wanted to use it. I don't know if it fits very well on the team. I don't think it does per se, and it might be a mon that I end up swapping out. But it's a Gen 1 favorite of mine, so I felt like this was the time to scoop it up as a 40-point mon, and that mon is Exeggutor. Just look at the egg faces; they're so derpy. Yeah, no, I absolutely love Exeggutor. It's a cool mon. It was very viable in Gen 1. It has since lost viability. I mean, it does get Chlorophyll, which is nice. It gets Harvest, which is nice. It is definitely outclassed by its Alolan form, just because the Dragon typing is nice to make sure you're not 4x weak to Bug, aka pretty much U-turn. And also, it just gets a little bit better coverage. Like, I think this would be really nice if it got Fire coverage. Fire coverage would be a thing that would be pretty nice, because it doesn't hit other grass types incredibly well, but even still, like, it gets psychic coverage, it gets grass coverage, and it does get like the ability to set its own Sunny Day, for example. Like, it's a pretty interesting physical move pool too. Like, it gets access to things like Brick Break, Stomping Tantrum, and Bulldoze. It gets SD, so that's cool. Low kick. Oh yeah, it does get, on the special side, it does get things like Sludge Bomb. Yeah, anyway, I think overall Exeggutor is a cool mon. Again, it's one of those things that, like, I could see myself not bringing it to a ton of matches, but the matches I do bring it to, I think it'll have sort of a nice place. But I don't know. We'll see if I decide to keep it. I think getting rid of Exeggutor and Carkol for maybe like some other low tier grass type that can remove hazards, and then maybe a different fire type or something. I don't know. I'll figure it out. We get 3 transactions inside of the regular season, so maybe I can make a trade with somebody, and maybe I can sort of figure it out from there. But anyway, Exeggutor is on the team, and the next pick, I still had Jolteon at this point, so I really needed a ground immunity. And at the 20-point tier, I thought that this Mon was actually kind of a steal. It gets some cool setup. Has some cool setup sets. It gets some cool moves, and so that Mon is actually Noctowl. So rolling with another Gen 2 Mon, which surprisingly enough the theme seems to be like Gen 8. I guess, yeah, Gen 8 and Gen 2 kind of seem to be the theme of this team. Like 10 Mons, I did that pretty well. There's 3 Gen 2 Mons and so far 3 Gen 6 Mons. So yeah, or Gen 8 Mons rather. So yeah, Noctowl, it's not gonna wow you. It does have 86 special attack, and on the special side, it is pretty bulky too. Like 100 base HP is solid, 96 special defense is solid. Gets access to things like Tailwind. Its stabs are pretty solid. Like it gets fire it gets fire coverage. It gets fairy coverage. It gets psychic coverage, and then I think it gets ghost coverage as well. And then obviously its stabs are normal and flying, so it has those. Yeah, and I think it's overall going to be a Mon that will perform decent for a 20-point Mon. I thought, like, I was surprised it made it to round 9 just because I thought it was one of the better 20-point Mons. And when I took it, a lot of people were like, oh, you sniped me. And I was just like, oh, my bad. Like, I thought this would go earlier. So I didn't prioritize it because I actually don't know why I didn't prioritize it. Like, I think it's a really good Mon for where it was at. So I don't know. But at the end of this, I was kind of contemplating a few different things because I do have 80 points left over at this point. I currently do not have a grounded poison or a fighting type, and so I really thought that Toxicroak could be a really good fit here. And I was looking at Toxicroak, and at the time I still had Jolteon, so when I was looking at Toxicroak, I was like, okay, Toxicroak fits a pretty nice speed tier because it's base 85, I believe, and like I can use that as a potential Scarfer, etc. But then I sort of thought about Rotom, and I was like, okay, if I'm going to pick up Rotom, then I'll be at 86 there. So I really need something to bridge Dragapult to Obstagoon. And so the Mon that I ended up taking is a Mon that I had in NPAA, which was a pretty fun league. It was a 12-person, 12 Mon league, so that was kind of daunting at times. But I liked how this Mon played, and so I figured I could try it again. It's a pretty good fighting type, and it was in the 80-point tier, and it's one of those Mons that if it was tiered higher, it wouldn't be the best value, but if it was tiered where it is, then it's fairly tiered, but it's just like a really good Mon, one of the better Mons in that tier, and that Mon is Mienshao. So Mienshao is my last pick. This thing gets Regenerator. It gets the ability to sort of pivot in and out of things. It hits incredibly hard. I've seen it win leagues. I've seen it win pretty big leagues. I've also seen it go to finals. Really, like, it's just a really good Mon. Like, Regenerator is going to be an ability that you bring most of the time, I feel like, but Inner Focus is nice because now you can't be affected by Intimidate, so I have a lot of things that just deter Intimidate on this team. And I feel like that's really nice. And it also has the ability to run Reckless, which is incredibly scary. So, yeah, and I mean, it gets access to things like Fake Out, obviously Drain Punch, High Jump Kick. It gets different forms of setup with both SD and I believe it gets Hone Claws. I'll have to check on that. Yeah, I mean, it gets good coverage, Stone Edge, think it's Blaze Kick as well. So yeah, all in all, like, I really, really like what Mian Chao brings to the team, and I think it's one of those mons that I didn't necessarily think it was going to be on the board when I was picking my fighting type, and I didn't prioritize my fighting type. I probably should have in hindsight, but yeah, and it also just bridges a really nice speed tier gap between, like, it being 105 speed gives me something that can also, again, be scarved and cover for things that are potentially scarfing to outspeed Dragapult. So, really excited to use Mian Chao again. And that's it. So that's the team. Again, I think one of the things that I am really excited to be able to do is just kind of pivot around with Dragapult and Scizor and even Primarina and Mian Chao and just kind of position things. I was talking to a couple people and they were like, wow, you have a bunch of mons that can just pivot around. Like, almost everything on your team can pivot. Like, Dragapult gets U-turn, Primarina flip turn, Obstagoon parting shot, Scizor U-turn, Piloswine doesn't, Rotom gets Volt Switch, Carkol doesn't really pivot, it's just gonna kind of like explode or something like that. Exeggutor teleport, Noctowl either gets Baton Pass or U-turn, or maybe both, I can't remember. And then obviously Mian Chao gets U-turn as well. So yeah, I think I'll be able to position and sort of get momentum a lot with this team. Really excited to use it. I think, again, overall, I'm happy with the way the team came out. I have good removal options, 3D Foggers and a Spinner. I would, again, like to have a Grounded Poison and be able to sort of both set T-Spikes as well as be able to absorb T-Spikes. And so that might be a transaction that is coming. Not sure. Need to figure it out. But yeah, overall, I like the team and I'm really excited to play with it. So that is pretty much it. If you like the content, please hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff, and keep an eye out for the upcoming content. YCL as well as the UGL draft review and UGL content as well. So on that note, I'm gonna get out of here. Thanks everybody. Peace.